The coalition is heading to its safe space today, defence and national security, with a pledge to increase defence spending to 3% of GDP within the next decade. Joining us live now, Wednesday panel, Labor MP Julian Hill and Liberal MP Keith Wallahan. Good morning to you both, gentlemen. So more detail ahead, no doubt. But Keith, has this come too late?
Not at all. Just about the overwhelming majority of Australians haven't voted, and most won't vote till next week, and the majority on Saturday, the 3rd of May. This is a really important announcement, and I don't have an advanced briefing to give you here this morning. I'll watch it with interest. But I've read the stories, and I think it's important that this is happening today, because we hear Labor and this government talk about us being in the most dangerous strategic circumstances since World War II. But their spending and action doesn't match that. And you don't need to just trust them on their words. Go back to when they were last in government, where they inherited spending of defence at 2% of GDP and brought it right back down to 1.56%, which was the lowest percentage since 1938. So defence is a big institution. It moves slowly. So let's look to when they last had authority for defence and what they did, and that is the concern about where this Labor government will take defence.
Well, I mean, I just spoke to Richard Marles about that, who argued against that point, saying this is actually the biggest spend post-war. But Julian, I'll send it over to you now. And Minister Marles also said that flashy press releases aren't a way to campaign. What's your biggest concern with what you've been able to see so far?
Well, I thank Keith for his service to our nation in uniform as we approach Anzac Day. But I feel a bit sorry for him. He's just said it's a great policy, but he doesn't know what it is. It's a nonsense thought bubble when it's another desperate distraction in the dying days of the election campaign. Was Dutton's desperate to distract from American-style cuts and chaos? The most telling moment in the debate last night was he literally admitted that he's not going to tell people what he's going to cut to pay for the $600 billion of nuclear reactors until after the election. They've had 3 years to think this through.
That is a lie, Julian.
3 years to think this through, and all they've got is a thought bubble. But it will be lovely, Pete, to see Andrew Hastie back on the national stage. He's been very busy in his electorate, I know, running around scrubbing the Liberal logo off all his signs and pamphlets and sitting at home with the calculator doing the numbers on Dutton if he loses his seat, as many polls are saying he's going to do.
Well, we could talk about the seat of Bruce as well if you want as well.
What I would say is don't listen to what they say in this desperate moment before an election campaign that's gone off the rails. Look at their record in government. I chaired the Defence Subcommittee, and frankly, if someone like Keith was on it, it'd be better for their side than many of the buffoons they sit around that table. Look at their record. 28 projects running 97 years late. No submarines, billions of dollars of taxpayer money pissed up against the wall. You don't fight battles with a press release. You know, they ran out of Australian flags standing behind Dutton when he was Defence Minister, announcing stuff that was never, ever delivered. 6 Defence Ministers in 9 years. You'd need fingers and toes to count the number of ministers through the broader portfolio. The government is investing more in defence. Defence expenditure is at the highest recorded since World War II and growing. An extra $50 billion, $57 billion over the next decade.
Not as a percentage of GDP.
$10 billion
Not as a
over
percentage
the
of GDP.
estimates. Doubling the size of the Navy's surface fleet. Long-range strike capabilities sooner, and actually ordering submarines as opposed to 9 years of just talking about it.
Can I just get to nuclear, because Julian raised that point, Keith, and it also came up in the debate last night. Labor has been hammering that $600 billion figure for a while now, but that's at the high end. The low end of that forecast is $116 billion. So why haven't you argued that point more aggressively?
Well, just one more point on defence before we move to nuclear. One of the most glaring omissions that Julian left out is that we have a full-time defence force of 60,000, but it is short by 5,000 people. That is 1 in 12 people are missing. So how can you credibly say that you are spending enough and managing defence when you have 1 in 12 people missing? It is not good enough. We do not have a defence force that is fit for purpose right now, and that's what today is about. To the nuclear figure, this is one of many scare campaigns that this Labor government is running. On Mediscare, on wages, suddenly Peter Dutton is setting wages as opposed to the Fair Work Commission. When you don't have actual credible policies and a future to put to people, you scare them. That is the Labor play. And so this $600 billion figure, which Julian just said himself, that they can't help themselves. It is absolute nonsense, and they are repeating this lies to Australians all the way through this campaign, and they are accelerating it in these last 2 weeks.
It's based on advice from the CSIRO, the AEMO,
No, it's based on advice from a lobby group.
But can I just say,
the UK's just built a nuclear reactor that's nearly $100 billion, and you want to build 7 of them.
But I just put this point to Richard Marles as well.
Nonsense.
Julian, I mean, if we're talking about the high end of nuclear, do you need to talk about the high end of renewable as well? When you're including power poles and the rollout, I mean, that's even more than nuclear.
So nuclear energy is the most expensive form of new power for Australia. That's an undisputed fact. Every energy economist admits it. CSIRO admits it.
But you don't have
it's
a figure,
the most expensive.
do you?
That's the first point.
On the entire rollout of renewables.
Yeah, I saw Richard Marles' interview. The second point I would make is Keith well knows and the opposition well know that there's no appetite whatsoever for $1 of private sector investment in risky nuclear reactors. The UK
well, then drop the ban, Julian. Drop the ban. You've got nothing to worry about.
The UK just built one, $100 billion, and you want to build 7 of them.
Drop
the
the ban.
difference with renewable energy is private sector investment is flooding into renewable energy. We are oversubscribed. The market is talking. The market has spoken. Why on earth would Australia not pursue the cheapest form of new power, renewable energy, firmed by gas? See, I can say gas, not your lies about renewables only that you keep repeating in the media. Pumped hydro, battery storage, it's cheaper.
Well, could you tell that to the Victorian state government? They're not fans of gas, Julian.
The best renewable energy resources of any developed OECD country. Pete, the final thing I just want to say.
Quickly.
Next week, if you want to get my Liberal opponent on to debate me here, if Keith's busy, I'd welcome that. You might get the unicorn, an interview with the Liberal candidate for Bruce. We could talk about these issues next week. Okay. I'll see you here.
Julian, Keith, good to chat as always. We'll talk to you again soon.